Here are 5 questions that parents of neurodivergent children often ask themselves. I'm Cath. I was diagnosed last year with ADHD. I'm awaiting an autism assessment and I am the parent of 2 neurodivergent daughters. My oldest is actually awaiting an ADHD assessment. My youngest has been diagnosed with autism and I'm almost certain she's got ADHD as well. I'm going to be talking now about 5 questions that we ask ourselves as parents, especially when we are new to this, especially when our child has just been diagnosed with either ADHD or autism or another neurodivergent condition. The first question is, why didn't I notice sooner? We often ask ourselves this question. I asked myself, and I know that so many of you watching have asked yourself this question as well. In a lot of cases, we didn't notice the traits in our child sooner, the autistic or ADHD traits in our child, because we have them ourselves and we are in fact neurodivergent ourselves. It's often very common for parents, particularly mums, but dads as well, to be diagnosed with ADHD or autism not long after their child has been diagnosed, or to start asking questions about the way they are themselves after they realise that their child is neurodivergent. This is exactly what happened with me. I wondered for a while about ADHD for myself. I'd wondered that for years, only in the last few years, because like many other people, I didn't realise for a long time that you could have ADHD in adulthood. So I'd wondered about that. I did not spot the signs of autism in my youngest daughter because I myself had those same traits, and I just assumed it was just normal. Obviously they were inherited, but autism and ADHD is hereditary in a lot of cases. I'm not saying in every single case, but it is very hereditary. So all the traits in my daughter, I didn't notice them as autistic traits because I did them myself. That's why it took me longer to realise and to start seeking a diagnosis for her. It was actually a head teacher at school who noticed it and brought it to my attention. And even when she did, I was still I was almost in shock a little bit, because it was like I had suddenly had this realisation of, oh yeah, she is autistic, but maybe I am too. Or sorry, maybe she's autistic and maybe I am too. So it was quite an eye-opening day for me. Even if you are not a neurodivergent parent yourself, even if you're neurotypical, it can be easy to miss the signs of autism and ADHD. The world we live in is very chaotic, and especially with boys, for example, that's why a lot of the time girls go a lot longer before they're diagnosed than boys, because in boys certain behaviours are seen as normal and they're seen as, oh, he's got loads of energy and things like that. So it can be easy to miss these traits. It can be easy to put it down to other things. Maybe they're overtired, and maybe they've had a bad day in school. So quite often that is why it takes us longer to notice the traits of ADHD and autism in our children. Question number 2, how can I support my child? If you have just realise that your child is autistic or has ADHD, or they've just been diagnosed, or you're wondering whether they might be, you might be looking for ways to how you can support your child. My number 1 tip, it's not just a tip, it's just obviously like a way of life, is to listen to them. And there may be things that they struggle with that you can't, especially if you're neurotypical yourself, you might think, oh, I can't see why they're so bothered by that thing. But try to see it from their point of view. It might be something completely irrational to you, but to them, if it's bothering them, it's bothering them. It's something that is causing them distress. I think because I myself am neurodivergent, a lot of the things my daughter struggles with are also things that I struggled with growing up. And there are times when my husband, for example, can't understand why she's so upset about certain things, and I understand it completely. I'll give an example. For example, rejection sensitivity dysphoria. If you're neurodivergent and you're watching this, you'll know what this is, and maybe you don't even experience it, but a lot of neurodivergent people do. So I experienced rejection sensitivity growing up. My daughter experiences it, and it can be very intense. So just in case you've not heard of rejection sensitivity, maybe if you're new to all of this, rejection sensitivity is the perceived or real knowledge that you feel like people don't like you, or you feel like people are judging you when they're not, or people are angry at you when they're not. Sometimes they are, and you're picking up on that, but a lot of the time they're not. And it can be someone might look at you in a certain way and you think they hate you. It could be that someone speaks to you in a certain tone of voice and you think they're angry at you. It's a very intense feeling of rejection, even from things that a lot of neurotypical people wouldn't bat an eyelid about. So rejection sensitivity is a massive example of something that I understand deeply. So even though now as an adult, I've done a lot of work on my own, not just on my mental health, but on my mindset about a lot of things in life. So I don't experience it as much now as I used to when I was younger. I do still sometimes experience it, but I used to experience it a lot more. But when my daughter is experiencing rejection sensitivity, which can be very often, it's like pretty much daily at some point. It might be like if I'm in the kitchen and she's asking me a question while I'm looking for something in the cupboard, for example, and if I answer it with a slight bit of frustration in my voice, not because I'm frustrated at her, but because I might be frustrated that I can't find what I'm looking for, she will think I'm angry at her, and I have to then explain, no, I'm not angry at you, I was looking for this in the cupboard. And it can sometimes take a while to explain, no, I'm not angry at you. And there are times when rejection sensitivity it cuts deeply sometimes. And being neurodivergent myself, when my daughter's experiencing that, I can feel it with her. I understand where she's coming from, and there might be other people who don't quite get it. And I think it's not about whether you understand it or not. Your child is experiencing that, and to them it's very real, even though to you it may be irrational, and you may be thinking, well, I'm not angry at them, but to them they feel that you are. That's just one example. Another way I would say of supporting your child is to research. Like if you're neurodivergent, then if you're like me, not all neurodivergent people love to research, but a lot of us do. We love to research autism, research ADHD, or whatever it is your child is experiencing, and know everything you can know about it. The more you know about it, the more you can support them. And I think it also helps you. It helps you as well. Not only are you helping your child, you're preparing yourself for things that, for example, in this situation, this might happen, or for the future, and how you can support your child in the future. So I think that's really important too. Another way of supporting your child is to just be there for them and to listen to whatever they need to say to you, for them to feel comfortable to openly express themselves to you. And I think after a long time of masking, like a lot of neurodivergent people do, especially females, we tend to mask more, because it's, again, going back to that male and female, it's it's often seen as more slightly more socially acceptable for males to act in a certain way than females. But if your child has been masking for a long time, they often will, that mask will come down when they get home. That's why they might be masking all day at school and then they come home and have a meltdown, or they take all their frustrations out on you. And it's often because they've taken that mask off, because they're at home and they feel safe and they feel like they can be themselves and express themselves, and that's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing necessarily in the moment for you if you're on the receiving end of, not on the receiving end of a meltdown, but if you're on the receiving end of built up anger that's built up through the day, for example. But what I am saying is that your child is feeling safe to express themselves at home, and that's a good thing. Allowing that and understanding that, okay, it's not okay, there's certain things it's not okay to do. It's not okay to hurt people and things like that, but it is okay to be angry. We are all human and we all experience anger. It's normal, it's healthy. It's just that understanding that your child, if they are autistic or have ADHD, they might express their anger in a different way. You'll begin to notice a pattern, and yeah, it might take a bit of time before you start to recognise that pattern, but you will notice it. Like, for example, with my daughter, when she's got something on her mind she's worried about, if something kind of pushes her over the edge, like a bit of rejection sensitivity can push her over the edge. So if she was worrying about something and then someone maybe spoke to her with a certain tone of voice, or she thought they were angry at her, she would then start to, her feelings would start to become too overwhelming and start coming out. She might get angry, she might be like verbally angry, and when she's in that situation, I know that here the pattern goes, she's worrying, then she becomes angry, then she becomes sad, and then she says sorry. And that's the way it goes every time. And it took me a while to notice that pattern, but it goes the same every single time. And now I know how to handle it at each stage. I know, for example, if I can catch the worry while she's still in that worrying stage, if I can help her with that, if I can recognise, right, okay, she's worried about something, let me talk to her, see if she wants to tell me about it, or if there's anything I can do to help her. If we can get it in that stage, that's brilliant, because that will prevent it from escalating. If it gets into the stage where something else has happened and it's triggered the anger, I can't talk to her while she's angry, and she knows that. So I won't just ignore her. I won't just leave her, and I will say to her, I'm going to give you a few minutes to, or however long you need to like release this, but I'll talk to you when you're feeling a bit calmer. And I do that every time. I let her know what I'm doing, because she then knows I'm not alone, but I am sat by myself in my room, or in the same room as us. It's just my mum and dad aren't going to talk to me at the moment because we can't get anywhere. It just makes things worse, and she knows that. So when she's feeling angry, we'll just explain to her, right, we are going to talk to you when you're feeling a little bit calmer. We're still here. If you need us, we're still here, but when you feel calmer, we're going to talk to you. And she kind of understands that now. She will let that anger out when she starts to feel sad, because she does every time after the anger comes sadness, and she'll feel sad. She'll say things like, she'll sometimes say that she hates herself and things like that, and that is when I know when she's getting into that sad phase. I can approach her and start to talk to her about things and help her. I don't want her to feel like she hates herself. I don't want her to feel like she's done something wrong by being angry, because we all get angry at times and it's normal and it's healthy. I will talk to her. I'll see if we can start to solve the problem, that the thing she's worried about, and the thing that triggered the reaction as well. when she's in that phase, that sad phase, she will always, off her own back, apologise for example, the things she said when she was in the angry stage, or even if it's not necessarily that she says anything that's directly, it's not necessarily that she calls us anything, it's not that, it's just she will say, I'm sorry for shouting at your mum, or I'm sorry for slamming the door, things like that. She will always apologise, so it goes the same every time. So that is another way you can support your child, just to let them know all emotions are okay. It's not okay to hurt other people, but all emotions are okay. I'm here for you, I'm here to support you, and you can always talk to me. Just to understand that, especially for neurodivergent children, I mean, we shouldn't be saying to our children anyway, we shouldn't be telling them to be quiet and or definitely not to like shut up or anything. We shouldn't be saying things like that. We should be open to hearing what they've got to say, to take an interest, because it's how we develop a strong, healthy relationship with our child. And so they know, I can talk to my mum, I can talk to my dad, or I can talk to, whoever you are to the child, I can talk to them and they're going to listen, and I feel loved by them, and it matters a lot, it really does. So that is basically being a safe place for your child. That's how you can support them. Other ways of how you can support them are to speak to the school. You've probably already done this, or if you're new to this and you know this is coming, you're going to be having a lot of involvement. If your child goes to mainstream school or to any school, you're going to have a lot of involvement with school. You're going to be speaking to teachers, maybe to head teachers, maybe to pastoral workers, and maybe to members of the council or mental health teams and things like that. It's going to happen. So I think it's important, whenever possible, if you can have a good relationship with certain people in the school, that's great. I know it doesn't always work like that, but it's always good to have it. It helps the child more if you can have a good relationship with certain teachers and certain people involved in the school. There might be times where you have to kind of put your foot down a bit to get your child the support they need. There probably will be times like that. There's going to be times where you feel angry at someone at the school and you're fighting for your child and what they need at school, and you feel like they're not listening, and in reality often they are also trying to support you the best they can, but they may not have the resources. It all depends. It depends on the school, it depends on the teachers and the parents, and it depends on the communication. But good communication will always get your child that bit more support that they need when they're in school. Or it may be that someone can put you in the right direction of applying for an EHCP, an educational healthcare plan for your child, which might then get your child further support. I think one thing that is important to recognise, you probably know it yourself, in a lot of mainstream schools, undiagnosed neurodivergent children are often seen as naughty. And I think that's it's really sad, because it's not that, maybe you've started to become aware of it and then you've spoken to the school and then they recognise, okay, this child is waiting for an assessment. But if you don't know and the teachers don't know, and the child is struggling with that school environment, whether it be in the classroom, whether it be with crowds, and things like that, they might be seen as being disruptive or being difficult and things like that, or being naughty, when in fact their needs aren't being met. So that's another thing to remember. I can often see the difference between certain children who are not yet diagnosed with ADHD or autism, and those who are, in the way that they're treated in school. So I think it's really important just to be aware of that. When it comes to also to supporting your child, I think a lot of it is about planning ahead and dependent on you as a person, depending on whether you're neurodivergent yourself, that may be easy or it may be difficult. I myself I have got combined type ADHD, and I really struggle with planning ahead. With anything executive function wise, even time, things like that, I struggle with a lot of things like that. But I also I am awaiting an autism assessment as well, but I also have times when I can be so almost militant in planning something. That's usually, for example, if we're going on holiday or Christmas and things like that, planning like bigger events, things like that. I am very structured when I plan things like that. But when it comes to having a neurodivergent child, planning ahead, for example, if you're going on holiday with a neurodivergent child, and this is my experience, that we've been experiencing the last few years. For example, I will make sure we can either like pre-book our seats so we can sit together. It will help. Obviously, you want to sit with your family anyway, but it helps her to feel safer. I will find out a way, if there's any way you can either pay for priority boarding, or if there's some kind of way that you can get on the plane first, because I know that she struggles with crowds and she feels more settled once she's sat down on the plane, whereas if we were coming onto a plane that was already full and we were like near the back of the queue, she would probably feel too overwhelmed and then not want to go on the plane at all. Once we were coming back from can't remember which country, we were in a queue and we were about to board the plane but not yet, and we were stuck in the middle of a queue. She was getting so stressed, she was going into a panic attack, and she was like, I can't do this, we need to go. She was trying to not get on the plane because the doors hadn't opened for the plane, and it was at a point where if it had, luckily a few minutes later, they opened the doors and the queue started moving and we got her on and she calmed down when she was in a seat. But if that had gone on for much longer, she would have probably just walked off and we would have, I don't know how we would have got home, but that's what would have happened. It's helpful also to have the sunflower lanyards in airports as well, just to, for example, some airlines require it if you are having priority boarding for a particular reason, like for example, they let people with who are in wheelchairs, they let them get on first, and obviously then someone would put their wheelchair on the plane. Also, again, people with hidden disabilities, and obviously ADHD and autism, it's a neurotype. Everyone's got different opinions. I don't see it as a disability, either of them, but I can see how having ADHD and autism in a neurotypical world can be disabling for people, or the environment is disabling for them. But anyway, that's just everyone has different opinions. Some people see it as a disability, others don't. I personally don't. I see it as a neurotype, but it doesn't make it any easier being in a neurotypical world as a neurodivergent. So that's another way to planning ahead, things like that. Do you need a sunflower lanyard? Are you going to be able to sit somewhere that's quiet? That's something we've dealt with over the last few years, particularly after lockdown and how much it affected my daughter. There was a point where we couldn't go in a restaurant without having a panic attack. That was after everyone had been isolated for so long. There was points where we could go in a restaurant if we were sat right by the door and it wasn't too busy in there. There's been times where we've been seated in the middle of the restaurant and it's been busy and she's had a panic attack and we've had to ask for our food to be taken outside, because other than that, like when we'd literally ordered our food and it was nearly coming to us. So it's just about, it's almost like, yeah, you've got to plan ahead for things. So that is another way you can support your child. Just also thinking, like, in a situation, have they Are there things they can do? How are they going to feel when they get to this place? Who are they going to talk to? Are they going to talk to people? Like, is it going to be busy? There's so many things we have to think about, and it can be overwhelming. So there's probably so much more I could talk about on supporting your neurodivergent child, but off the top of my head, they are the main things. So number 3, how can I make sure my child will be safe when I'm not with them? This is a question that I'm sure has gone through all of your minds watching this, and mine included. And I think, again, having that good relationship with school is, if they go to mainstream school or to school, that's a great start. To know that you've got people there you can trust, that have also got your child's best interest at heart, that can be a massive weight lifted. For example, at my daughter's school, I can think of quite a few people that have been really supportive and that I would trust to make sure that she's okay. So that's one place to start, is just to have that good relationship with school. Talking to your child about age appropriate things in life, whether that be about sex, periods, puberty, consent, like what to tolerate, what is okay to tolerate in a friendship or a relationship and what isn't. For example, what manipulation might look like. And I'm not saying to just, it's obviously, you wouldn't want to necessarily just go in and say, right, I understand people can be manipulative. I have been manipulated by many people, and it's a common thing for neurodivergent people to attract manipulative people. It doesn't happen always, but it can happen. And I think being able to recognize manipulation, to being able to recognize that not everyone thinks the same way that you think, and as a result of, so a lot of neurodivergent people are very deeply empathic. We care about a lot of things, and as a result of that, we often care about different people and animals and things like that, and it can also make us become people pleasers. I was a people pleaser for most of my life, up until like probably within the last 7 years. I'm not saying I'm never a people pleaser now, but it's hardly at all compared to what I was. But we can be people pleasers. As a result of being a people pleaser, it can make you say yes to things you don't want to say yes to, or say it can put you in situations where you don't want to upset someone else, or you don't want to make them angry, or you don't want to make them feel bad. So as a result, you put that onto yourself, and you think, right, instead of making them feel bad, I'll just feel bad, because then at least they'll feel better, or like things like that, just to make sure that they're aware of boundaries, to how to set boundaries for themselves. What is a boundary? It's allowing them to say it's okay to say no to people, but also, and know this, if you're teaching them it's okay to say no, they're going to say no to you as well. So just bear that in mind, and that's okay. Like there's times where, like, I have raised my girls to be loving and caring, but not to take shit off other people, basically. And even though I still see to an extent they are still people pleasers, to an extent, you have to understand that when you're raising children to be strong and to be kind, but to be strong as well, and to have opinions, it's okay for them to express their opinions. They're also going to have those opinions to you as well. They're going to say no to you at times as well, and they're going to be feisty sometimes, and that's okay. And I think it's important teaching your child about boundaries, teaching them that, like, for example, a lot of neurodivergent children can seem younger than they are, maybe sometimes a bit more naive than other children of their age. Not always, but sometimes. And I always will remind my younger daughter, my oldest daughter's an adult now, I did the same with her, but like especially with my younger daughter, my oldest daughter is not autistic, but like I mentioned earlier, she's waiting for an ADHD assessment. My youngest daughter, I'm almost certain she's definitely autistic, and I'm almost certain she's got ADHD as well. I always remind her of things, like to make sure that she's looking both ways when she crosses the road. For example, she's only just sometimes started walking to school. She's in high school, and I will walk with her to meet her friends. So she's not on her own, and then she will walk the rest of the way with her friends. But I'm very aware of the fact that I feel overprotective, but I'm trying not to be too overprotective, because I know she's got to live a life as well, and I want her to be able to do those things that or sometimes when she's been really upset, she said, I just want to feel normal. And I think it's amazing to be neurodivergent, but I also get that feeling of especially when you're that age, of wanting to feel normal. And I want her to be able to have those normal things, like walking to school with her friends and things like that. So there's times when I'm like, even though I know she's my friend, I'm like, just make sure when you're crossing over there, make sure you're looking both ways all the time. She's like, I know, Mum, I know, you don't need to tell me. But I feel like I always do that anyway, and I always talk to her about boundaries and about talking to strangers and things like that. And I think with neurodivergent children, it's not that it's not that they're less intelligent, because like my daughter is she's very, very intelligent, but again, it comes down to that tendency to people please, or that tendency to maybe be naive to situations as well. So I think that's really important to talk about things like that with them. When it comes to them becoming an adult, sometimes you've got to let them live their life, of course. And again, every neurodivergent child is different, and they all have different support needs and they need different levels of support, and that really depends on your individual circumstances. It can be completely overwhelming as a parent to be sending your neurodivergent child out into this big neurotypical world that is going to overstimulate them, and it is going to cause them distress at times, because as neurodivergent adults, even, I'm obviously speaking for myself, I get completely overstimulated at times, and there's times where I'm just, and I need to leave a situation, or even going shopping in a supermarket, food shopping, I need to be on my own for ages after that. Things like that, there's times. So your child is going to experience that. They are going to experience that in the world, but we have to also let them to an extent. Obviously not to the point where if it's causing unbelievable mental distress or physical, like panic attacks, obviously there needs to be some intervention there, but we have to also let them experience the world and to learn and adapt, and not adapt as in not change themselves to fit the world, but to be able to try their best to adapt in situations where that they want to or feel like they need to adapt into. I'm not in any way saying for them to mask to fit in with other people, but if there's a situation, for example, like my daughter wants to walk to school with her friends, she wants to do that, and she knows as a result of that there's going to be certain uncomfortable situations that she may have to walk through with her friends, walk through a crowd or walk past all the other rest of the school going in the morning. That's overwhelming for her, but at the same time she really wants to be able to do that, so she to an extent has to adapt to that. So that is what I would say about keeping them safe in situations. I mean, there's probably other things that will come into my mind, and if there is, I will do a further video about that. But I think that is something that goes through our minds a lot as parents of neurodivergent children. Question number 4, what will my child's future look like? Now this has probably been through probably all of these questions have been through your mind, but there are times when I wonder, will my youngest daughter, will she always live with us? Will she want a family of her own? What will their future look like in regards to, will she follow her dreams, chase her dreams? Will she make them happen? Will she want to get a job, or will she want to start a business? Will she want to go to uni or college or study? What will she want, and what will she be able to cope with? And I wonder that all the time. I'm a great believer in, obviously, society expects certain things of people. They kind of expect, oh, fit into a box, go to school, go to college, go to uni, get a good job, work, oh, start a family, get married, start a family, buy a house, do all the normal stuff, and there you go. No, it's like, life doesn't have to be like that, and it doesn't have to look like that. And I think whatever happens with our neurodivergent children, if we are preparing them as best we can for the world, I believe you learn more in life than you do in school. And that's no disrespect to school or to teachers or anything. I appreciate that we need to learn, there's certain things we need to learn, but I also believe that there's certain things that should be taught in schools that aren't. For example, how to set boundaries, how to manage your money, how to love yourself as a person and not think that you're unworthy. I think certain things should be taught in schools, but I do believe that life teaches you more. And when it comes to what our neurodivergent child's future will look like, it may be that they've got a vision and they will make that happen. It may be that there are things they want to do but they feel they can't do, and maybe things need to be adapted around that. So for example, it might be that they'd love to study a particular subject but they would feel too overwhelmed going to university or college, maybe because of the crowds or because of being away from home or something like that. An option around that would be distance learning. You can even do degrees online nowadays, and while it might be more beneficial to be able to experience it in person, that's not for everyone, and that's okay. There are ways around things. It might be that they become inspired and start their own business doing something, like one of their special interests might be crafting or doing something in particular. It might be that they're absolutely amazing at something to do with like fixing things, like they might become a mechanic, they might become a scientist. There's so many different things, and there's so many different ways you can do things nowadays. I think now more than ever, there's so many opportunities, and you can make them happen for yourself as well. So when it comes to that, what will be will be. We're human beings, not human doings. So even if your neurodivergent child didn't do those typical go to college, go to uni, get a certain kind of job, even if that didn't happen, that's okay, because they're here to be. They will find their way in life, and maybe that's with support from yourself or from other people. Maybe that it might be that they find a group of friends, or potentially other neurodivergent friends, maybe not, maybe neurotypical friends, and you just never know what's going to happen. They might, their confidence might grow, they might thrive in a certain area which they feel comfortable in that area, and maybe they might not feel comfortable in another type of job or career, but in that particular career they might thrive and do amazing at it. So there's just so much opportunity out there. When it comes to families and finding love and things, I do believe there's love out there for everyone, and I think obviously at the moment the children, there's no rush or anything like that. Even if things like that happen when they're older than what is typically expected, that's fine. Even if your child does end up living with you forever, that's fine too. We bring our children into the world with the intention of loving them and supporting them, and while we may have certain dreams for them, they can only live their own dreams. They can't be expected to live what we want for them. Even though we might want the absolute best for them, they will have their own path in life, and that's fine. So when it comes to what will the future look like, we don't know our own futures, so we can do our best to prepare for certain things and to learn certain things, and that's okay. But it's the same for everyone. We don't know what our future will look like. We can guide it in a certain way, just as you can help your neurodivergent child guide their life in a certain way. If they've shown an interest in something, for example, and it might be something they're really good at, or even if they're not really good at it, but they're interested in it, it might be that you can support them by helping them find a course or a particular documentary about that thing. You can help your child to guide their life in a certain way, but we don't know what will happen in the future. So that's one of those questions where we just don't know, but it can be positive. So that's the way I choose to think. I choose to, whenever possible, not toxic positivity, because I understand how toxic that can be, but whenever possible, I like to see the good in things, and that includes when I'm thinking about my children's future, whether or not they would, obviously they both are neurodivergent, but even if they weren't, I would think the same. I would still try and encourage them, not let things hold them back. There may be things that they struggle with that they can't do in the same way that a neurotypical person can do. Maybe they can do it in a better way. It's just one of those things. As long as we can support our children with whatever they choose to do, and kind of guide them in the right direction, then we're doing a good job. Question number 5. What support do I need as the parent of a neurodivergent child? Now, this is probably a question that less of you have asked yourself, and that is because as parents we put our children first, and we kind of usually our needs come last, but this is really important. So you've probably heard the saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. That applies massively in this situation. Having a neurodivergent child, whether you yourself are neurodivergent or neurotypical, is an emotional roller coaster. It is full of ups and downs, and it's almost like you have to experience the world in a way that's different than what you were expecting, and that can bring grieving with it as well. Not grieving that your child is neurodivergent, because like I mentioned before, it's absolutely, everyone's different, and it's a different neurotype, and it's amazing. Neurodivergent people, everyone's got something to offer the world, neurodivergent people included. Some of the most amazing minds in history have been neurodivergent, and some of the kindest people on the planet are neurodivergent, and there's so much going for neurodivergent people. So I'm not saying grieving about your child being neurodivergent, but it can bring with it a certain grief of what you were expecting or wanting your life, or maybe your career to go like, and it's not quite gone as planned. So it is really important to ask yourself, what support do I need? Whether that be, have you got someone you can talk to? Whether it's just having a coffee with a friend or a family member, or is there maybe do you need counselling? Because to be honest, as someone who's training and counselling, everyone needs a little bit of counselling anyway, but it can be it sometimes can be a shock to the system when your child's diagnosed as neurodivergent, and just kind of understanding that things are going to go differently than you expected. And counselling can help with that, help you to process your feelings about that, but also just about life in general. Do you need financial support in any way? So, for example, if your child is, and the thing with the support needs of neurodivergent children, sometimes they are consistent, like they may consistently need higher levels of support. Sometimes it's consistent that they need lower levels of support. Sometimes they can need high or low, and like I say, it's a roller coaster. And there might be times where, for example, if your child is needing like quite a level of support, and you've had to adapt your work schedule, for example, or work less, which has happened with me, you might need more financial support. That could look like applying for disability living allowance for your child. If you feel like your child needs that, that can go towards things like funding therapy they may need, counselling, psychotherapy, other types of therapy, or, for example, anything that's going to help them to cope better with life. That can be very helpful. It might be that applying for carers allowance, if you believe that's beneficial to you as a family, and that you're caring for your... Okay, here's the thing, you will get people who say we should care for your child anyway, and of course you should, you absolutely should. But at the same time, if you're caring for your child at a much higher level than other children, you know, for example, a neurotypical child who doesn't need that care at all, if your child is struggling in life and you're having to reduce your hours in work, why shouldn't you apply for that carer's allowance? Because you are wanting to work, you are wanting to be able to pay for it yourself, but sometimes life happens differently than you expect. So yeah, whether it be financial support, whether it be like a support group, even if it's an online support group like an ADHD or autism group, are you looking after your health? Are you eating well? You might be rushed all the time, you might be stressed all the time, and it might affect your appetite. If you're not eating proper meals and maybe not getting the right nutrients, is there anything that you could do just to kind of boost your nutrients? Like, even if it's like shop bought smoothies, that just to get some fruit in you, or multivitamins or things like that. Are you sleeping well? And I'm going to say probably not, but you know, is there anything that could help you to sleep better? For example, even though sometimes I know at times we all need, if we've had a really overwhelming day and it can feel like an escape to look at your phone and just mindlessly scroll through things, it's not good for your sleep. The blue light before bed doesn't help. Could you do something different instead? Like, could you read a book instead of scrolling on your phone? Could you get a slightly earlier night if possible? I know that's not always possible. Magnesium, just side note, studies show that a lot of neurodivergent people are low in magnesium. And I'm not saying to just give your child magnesium or give yourself magnesium if you're neurodivergent. It's something to look into, and there are I think there's like 9 different types of magnesium, and magnesium can help you sleep. That's why that just reminded me. I take magnesium glycinate before bed, and you're meant to take about an hour before bed. Sometimes I forget and take it just before bed, but it helps me to sleep all night. When I don't take magnesium, I wake up multiple times through the night, so I don't get like that full good quality sleep. Magnesium glycinate helps me to get that really good quality sleep. as I say, the different types of magnesium, and some magnesium is for the certain magnesium which are for other things. So for example, magnesium glycinate that I take tends to not irritate the stomach. Certain magnesium can be have more of a laxative effect. I might be wrong, but I think that might be magnesium citrate or magnesium, I think it's citrate, but I might be wrong about that. Magnesium glycinate doesn't have that effect. So just, that's something to look into. And of course, if you're unsure about anything, ask your GP, because this is not medical advice, by the way. So magnesium can help with sleep. I think that when it comes to a good night's sleep, it can be helpful to write down things that are in your mind, just to get them out your head, write them down on paper and think, right, I'll look at that tomorrow, see what's in there. Is there anything that actually needs dealing with, or is it all just noise? Quite often it is just noise, and there's quite often things obviously that you might be worrying about, which is going to affect your sleep. So it's sometimes handy to have a notebook and a pen next to your bed, just to get that stuff out, write it down. That's another tip that can help. Or even when you first wake up in the morning, if there's something that because your mind's refreshed, something you can remember that you need to do that day, just write it down quickly. So looking after yourself is essential, and it might be that you just need an hour every now and then, or if you can every day, or like just sometime, even if it's 10 minutes to yourself, or half an hour to yourself. Like, I know that's not always possible, it depending on your family situation. If you're a single parent, that might not be possible, and it depends on your child's school situation, whether they're being homeschooled or in mainstream school or in a special educational needs school. It really depends on a lot of things. But if you can, just look for ways that you can support yourself a little bit more, and that will ensure that you're able to support your child that little bit better. So I hope this has been helpful for you, and what I would like is, if there's any other questions that you've asked yourself, put them in the comments, because maybe either me or other viewers can actually answer those questions for you. But it would be interesting to see what kind of questions we ask ourselves as parents of neurodivergent children, because it can feel lonely at times, and I want you to know you're not alone. So thank you so much for watching. If you found value in this video, please like and subscribe. Thank you, bye.